Hello and welcome to next Metagame Monday. I'm actually recording for the second time because, well, I actually forgot to turn on my microphone because I was working on something else in between recording Metagame Mondays. That being said, I've actually collected my thoughts from the first recording, so this video might be a bit shorter than expected. Now, I was preparing to do Xerneas, but the Xerneas archetype is undergoing some changes, and for it to answer the metagame a bit more correctly, so I am gonna instead monitor the Xerneas situation for like week or weeks later to just make a correct report about it, since I feel it having like Sun and Charizard is very underexplored and should be explored more, so the Xerneas has a bit better matchups. Now that I have said that, let's just go over the Dialga team. So Dialga, what is the idea of Dialga? What's the difference between the other three archetypes I have covered? Well, Dialga is more so a was actually unintentional, but yeah, Dialga is taking it a bit more slow than the other archetypes, and it relies a bit more on type matchups than the other do. Like Zacian just Behemoth Blades pretty much everything that doesn't resist it and beats the Dynamax this way. Groudon is like kind of matchup based as well, but its friends Venusaur and Charizard are not. These Pokemon are very powerful, very nuclear, can boost the special attack in multiple ways, can sleep powder, which affects pretty much all Pokemon but the grass types, and the Kyogre's water spouts are just universal as time is, really, Gen 3 is. It just water spouts everything and it hurts every single time. Now Dialga has a high special attack, but it can hit hard as well, but it does struggle with hitting hard like a bit more than the other archetypes do, unless you add like Life Orb or Adamant Orb. The idea of Dialga is take it slow and increase the defenses and make yourself almost invincible. Be one of these Pokemon that just doesn't take much damage, but opponent takes a lot of damage in return. Kind of hard to set up sometimes with Dialga, but it's the idea of it just being very hard to remove, and you can be scared to hit it with super effective attacks to remove it as well, thanks to weakness plus. This adds up on the idea of Dialga being kind of the Pokemon that is just irremovable. You do not want to really hit it hard because of the weakness plus. Proc would pretty much mean it one-shots everything on your team, especially with its almost flawless coverage of these three moves. It can increase defense, it can increase special defense, so it's extremely hard to remove. Now the speed investment is to just outspeed some other Dialgas and Groudons. You get 2 extra points here for value of 8 EVs, and rest of the EV spread is put to bulk, so it's evened out. So yeah, Dialga is kind of the Pokemon that can get passive, but also against more hyper-offensive teams, it's one of these Pokemon that it's hard to remove and one-shots or do it chaos back a lot. That is the idea of Dialga. So what happens if Dialga gets too passive or gets snarled? Well, in that case, Dialga with weakness plus a little bit falters behind. Sometimes even if opponent got like Light Screen up and Assault Vest, it will struggle to 2-hit KO these Pokemon, and maybe even 3-hit KO if they Dynamax. So Grimmsnarl will support both of these ideas to make Dialga kind of irremovable piece with Reflect and Light Screen. Of course, these are great things. They increase the overall bulk of the team for 8 turns alongside with Light Clay, which extends the turns from 5 to 8. And if you're thinking like, oh, Dialga could get very passive, well, think twice, because Fake Tears is here to help. It allows you to hit hard everything. Well, basically like Finny, I think, just finds the single back Steel Spike now. That is amazing, and Finny is one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the game, so yeah, it's kind of great to have Fake Tears just to prevent yourself from getting too passive against some Snarl teams, some Parting Shot shenanigans. So yeah, Fake Tears helps Dialga to not be too passive and be a little bit more proactive like the other Kyogre, Groudon, and Zacian are. And Spirit Break on Grimmsnarl is basically so it's not too passive itself, just not a... I mean, it's hard to taunt it, because a lot of taunts are pranksters, and prankster taunt actually, the Dark typing makes Grimmsnarl actually immune against prankster attacks, so... But having Spirit Break on Grimmsnarl makes you also help Dialga with Urshifu problems, since you 2-hit KO both of them. Or if the opponent is Dark type Urshifu and it's Choice Bandit, you actually one-shot it with Spirit Break. So yeah, the Grimsnarl helps with that. And Dialga is one of the main selling points, of course, of Dialga is that it's resistant to water and has great bulk. So it actually lifts water spouts from Kyogre very, very well. So the idea is that Grimsnarl alongside it could counteract Kyogre. It actually, the Max Dragon actually, alongside with the fake is you actually one-shot Dialga, but the idea is that with a lot of special defense investment and light screen, Grimsnarl should take the water spout as well and be able to set up second screen later in the game. So that's the idea of Grimsnarl overall, alongside the Dialga, the bulky, strike hard back Pokemon. Now, Tapu Fini, it might be a bit confusing how I describe Dialga to be like, hits hard back but can get passive, but it's just kind of like how it goes in the metagame. It snarls and protects, really. With protect and stuff like light screen snarl, Dialga can get very passive, but once opponent doesn't have too many protects, it actually hits hard. So that's like kind of the case for hyper offensive teams. Hyper offensive teams generally do not have too many protects, and this is where Dialga's build kind of shines. But fake tears and dual screens just pull up on both of these points of Dialga to make them work in pretty much every scenario. Talking about every scenario, what is the idea of Tapu Fini here? Well, the team had a bit of a problem against Amigas, so I added Tapu Fini, but it missed the surge. So watch out, because Max Dragons against grounded targets is going to be the base power is going to be halved in Misty Terrain. This is about the same set from Series 7. It runs as much speed to speed creep as many Finis as possible. It runs a lot of rest of it is put the bulk and it gets breakpoint. Again, here as you can see, gets 2 extra points for value of 8 EVs. That's just optimal EV spreading for Tapu Fini. Now the rest of the set is Calm Mind. It pretty much is supposed to be the reverse sweeper. Alongside with Steel Spikes from Dialga, it can get ridiculously bulky in both special and physical spectrum and increase the special attack as well with its Calm Mind, secondary effect of increasing special attack. It is also pretty hard to remove thanks to leftovers. It wins a lot of late games against stuff like Porygon 2 without Eerie Impulse. Its main goal is really to win the late games alongside with the dual screens and Steel Spike and Calm Mind boosts. It really does synergize well with Dialga, since Dialga is one of the best natural counteractions to Rillaboom, really. Oh yeah, one nice thing I want to mention about Dialga is the fact that it can be ridiculously hard to remove in late game once opponent already Dynamaxed. It's just kind of like difficult to remove Dynamax Dialga, and it's just even harder to remove it thanks to thanks to the fact opponent cannot hit it with super effective moves. Thanks to opponent knowing weakness policy, and for example, open team sheet formats. That's, I think, kind of the magic of weakness policy as well. If you got weakness policy, opponent will think twice before max quaking the Dialga. But without it, if opponent knows that you have like Life Orb or Adamant Orb, opponent will just max quicken and will know that there is no punishment for hitting it with max quick. With weakness policy, there is very much of a punishment, especially since with Reflect and Intimidate spam you got on this team, you should be able to just kind of like take almost any max quick as long as it's not from Landorus in current form, which is quite rare. So yeah, that's the Fini idea. I've seen it take under Reflect and +2 defense. It took 40% from Woodhammer from Rillaboom, and then it did like over 60% back with Mean Blast. And then it got leftovers and Grassy Terrain recovery. So yeah, Rillaboom can synergize well with leftovers Fini actually. So yeah. Landorus's idea was to be a Sun counteraction, and it certainly, and like I wanted Landorus to be something else as well, so I added Swords Dance with its Intimidate and OK Bulk as you're seeing from here, and dual screens. It should find a lot of room to set up Swords Dance and go for like reverse sweep against more passive teams with stuff like Parting Shot, dual screens, Grimmsnarl. If they just play too passively, you can punish that with Swords Dance, which I feel is kind of great. And you're also immunized below it from stuff like Spectre, but most importantly, you are immunized to Sleep Powder from Venusaur. And with this maximum attack investment, you are going to be able to one-shot even a Dynamaxed or G-Maxed Venusaur with Max Airstream. It's 100% knockout. Chance to knock out if they take Life Orb Recoil and they're 4 HP, so that is another important point. Max Rockfall, of course, important point against Charizard, and Max Quake, very great stab against mirror Dialga matchups, and it's just a stab. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much the Landorus. Yeah, these names for items are alternative items you can run on these. Taunt is, if you want to run Taunt, like if you want to run Assault Vest on Landorus, for example, you need to add Taunt on Grimstyle, so you actually can counteract these opponents' Venusaur Sleep Powders a bit better, or else you are gonna be kind of screwed. And the Goggles is of course better counteraction to Venusaur. Now Incineroar is usually your glue on these kind of teams. It also fills up a role of like not only Intimidate, Fake Out support, and Flare Blitz for additional Sun counteraction, but it also has the Snarl to punish the Cataracts Shadow Rider a bit better. Now you might be thinking like Max Darkness, Darkest Lariat is a bit better, but Cataracts Shadow Rider plus Indeedee can follow me turn 1 and to redirect the Max Darkness, and then they just survive with Focus Sash or something like that, and then they just go for Helping Hand plus Max Quake to KO the Incineroar the second turn. Since Max Quake does like 45% turn 1, and then it does like over 60% turn 2. So it's not a very good idea to run Darkest Lariat in all honesty. And Snarl is extremely important in counteracting Xerneas, since this spread not only allows us to take +2 Moonblast, but also +1 Max Starfall as long if the Xerneas chooses to Dynamax. So yeah, that's what the investment is for. You can run a bit more speed on Incineroar as well. Actually, it might be actually very important to run that when I think about it. We might get to it in the Xerneas game plan a bit later in today's video, but so far this is the point of this EV spread. If I'm going to tell you to run more speed, I would run something along the lines of this, to win as many speed ties against the opponent's Incineroar as possible, to for example get a Fake Out before they can Fake Out you, to Fake Out the Geomancy Xerneas. So yeah, but for now, let's just stick to this spread. Yeah, you get a breakpoint here, as you can see here as well. That's kind of cool. So yeah, and Citrus Berry makes the Incineroar just overall more bulky. Sugar Berry is not going to save you from Cataracts Shadow Riders enough Max Quake, so it doesn't really matter. And last slot being Thunderous is like the last slot on the team is usually kind of free. You can pretty much run anything on that, but Thunderous Incarnate form allows you to counteract Evoltal teams a bit better and punish stuff like Snarl Spam from Evoltor, Moltres, Galar, or Incineroar. As I've said before, in Dialga, actually Vectors cannot hit the Incineroar, so Dialga is not able to usually one-shot Incineroar turn 1, and if it gets Snarl off, your Dialga's usefulness and your game plan might crumble apart on the spot. Now, if you do something like I bait the Incineroar in the Snarl turn 1 and switch to Define Thunderous turn 1 and set up the kind of like appropriate screen to make your Thunderous a bit bulkier and resistant to stuff like Rock Slide, whatever opponent throws from their second slot, you get an attack boost, and then you reverse sweep them with max airstreams because the Thunderous is just so fast. So yeah, that's the idea, to punish these Snarls opponent might be trying to counteract you with. Other than that, the Assault Vest on the Thunderous Incarnate form was kind of like leftovers. I didn't put the item anywhere, but I think it fits Thunderous a bit more in today's situation, especially with Light Screen plus Assault Vest make it extremely bulky against Thorn Ogre archetype. As we're gonna go over later in the game plan section, you're gonna see why Thunderous is actually very important. Other than that, 2 stabs, then Superpower for max knuckle boost and for coverage options, and Iron Tail I feel is kind of the best choice in the last slot, since it allows you to boost the defense stat from other source than the Dialga. So you can go for max Steel Spike and increase the Tapu Finis defense stat and make it even more annoying for something like a Evoltal team to remove. Other than that, you want max attack, max speed, so you are as fast. You are outspeeding all the great Pokemon like Artana, and you are hitting as hard as possible because Assault Vest can really afford to lose a little bit more, even a little bit of attacking power. So yeah, that's the standard team I talked about. Now there are some alternative options you can go with on the Dialga archetype. You can have your own Bulldozer, so you self-proc your own weakness policy. Now keep in mind, you have to remove Telepathy, because even if you go for like a self-Mach Punch with hit on top, you cannot hit yourself as long as you got Telepathy. You can just turn off Telepathy, the ability, secondary if just main effect of ignoring the allies' attacks on command if you just gotta remove it altogether and again add pressure. And second is, watch out for Incineroar actually outspinning your Dialga. You do not have clear body or full metal body in case of Solgaleo, so your speed will be dropped and you will be below 80 speed, which is usually above the Incineroar's speed. Then it parting shots, lowers your special attacks, which is the flying type. Max Quake goes in the flying type and it gets ugly, so if you want to self-bulldoze yourself, run a bit more speed so you outspeed Incineroars. Other than that, there are multiple other bulldozers you could run, like Landorus. You could run Latios, yeah, they get bulldozed for some reason. And Raikou with dual screens is great for this role as well, I feel, so yeah, that is the option. Another thing Dialga can do pretty well is to go for Resurrection Trick Room. Oh yeah, Dialga can go for Trick Room. You're surprised I'm only covering that right now, but really, the allies of Dialga have gone over right now, just do not appreciate Trick Room all that much. They all function outside of Trick Room just so fine that they don't really require it, and I would much rather run Protect on Dialga to make it a bit more consistent, so... but if you want to run Trick Room, I would probably remove the Protect. Just remove the Protect. Keep the Max Quake, since that is going to be your way to remove Incineroar on the lead that might want to go for Snarl spam. You just go for Helping and Max Quake turn 1, and you immediately one-shot the opponent's Incineroar before it goes for Snarls. And your Dialga goes Berserk after that with special defense boost. Although you are going to miss out on setting up Trick Room, it's still very important to keep the Max Quake as a result, with Indeedee's Helping Hand. Indeedee is otherwise your best bet to go for Resurrection Trick Room. You really, actually, you might want to go like Honor Speed, so you Honor Speed Rillaboom. So Rillaboom won't be able to go for Fake Out. Honor Speed, you set up Grassy Terrain instead of Psychic Terrain and fake you out. This way, you're always going to get Psychic Terrain, you're always going to prevent the Fake Out, and you're always going to set up the Trick Room, since Indeedee with Focus Sash is guaranteed to take like 2 attacks, so... And in the back, you can run a bunch of different Pokemon. My friend is actually running Dialga, Resurrection Trick Room, and he runs a Choice Band Dracovish, which with Strong Jaw Vicious Friends is actually ridiculously powerful. So that's an example of Trick Room Sweeper you could run on this team. So yeah, that's the usual team build of Dialga. Now let's go over to Google Slides presentation. Righty. Alrighty, perfect. So, yeah, a bunch of basic information. I do not know if I actually updated the Pokepast here in the presentation. I might not have had, actually. I'm gonna go look over that in later. Alright, so Torn Ogre. The idea is, opponent sees Dialga, and they want to go for Snarl, because that's like emergency mode. Cortana can't do much against Weakness Policy, because it procs the Weakness Policy with Max Knuckle. Dialga can do much and gets one-shotted by Effectis plus Max Dragon. Regielka can do much, Amogus can do much, Tornadus cannot do much. So opponent automatically defaults to just going Tornadus and Incineroar lead. And this way they will try to parting shot your Snarly so Dialga is not dangerous. What you do is you lead with Thunderous, and opponent just gives you free attack boost, and you should be casually able to reverse sweep the game after that. It's really that easy, especially if you go like Dialga in the back and Landorus, just be able, which have like fantastic late game matchups. Like Water Spout from Kyogre does not even come close to, I think, to it KOing your Thunderous with Light Screen plus Assault Vest. So do not worry about late game Kyogre, do not worry about it. And I think you actually one-shotted as well with Max Lightning from +1, so yeah, this is what we are fishing for. This is what the opponent should ideally do. If they go with Tornadus by Kyogre lead though, you should be able to... actually, what I'm talking about in this presentation, Max Lightning the Kyogre, I suspect I'm predict. Oh yeah, I predict opponent actually going for Max Airstream, and like predict us to go for Max Airstream, since the Cortana switch is just so obvious. It just really is so obvious, because it's just yeah, so like it's kind of hard to explain this matchup without actually reading what I said here, but the basic idea is you expect the opponent to expect you to go for Max Airstream. So yeah, you should be theoretically able to one-shot a Kyogre Opponent might be also thinking like, no way, water spout does not do enough damage to Thunderous, but it does not do. With light screen and assault vest, you're going to be easily taking the water spout and then setting up the second screen with reflect, and it's going to be kind of annoying for opponent to just deal with that. If Kartana switches in, I actually recommend switching to Dialga, since with the defense boost you should be able to match up against Kartana a bit better. Since opponent is most likely Dynamaxing the Kartana, opponent won't be able to go through the defense boost with their Sacred Swords. And the next turn off, you switch to Dialga and opponent has Kartana Dynamax on the field. There is no other attack than Max Cycle in the Dialga that is not very effective. So opponent goes for Max Knuckle. As a result, Kartana should faint, and then Thunderous plus Dialga should be able to clean up the game kind of easily, even if they got Kyogre, since we got backup game plan against the Kyogre to knock it out with Fake Tiss plus Draco Meteor. So yeah, basically, I might have gone over that very fast, but the idea is try to Max Lightning turn 1 to fish for the KO on Kyogre. Like, a little bit over prediction, but whatever. If you're feeling opponent just switches the Kartana, go for the Airstream, of course. But other than that, go for Steel Spike once Kartana switches in to increase the Dialga's defense, and then kind of bang on the opponent, going for a Max Cycle on the Dialga for Kartana to not be completely useless that turn. You then KO Kartana, then you systematically KO Kyogre next turn with Fake Tears plus Draco Meteor or by Wild Charge, and then you should be able to clean up the game pretty easily. Because Aleki does not Incineroar, Amigas, or Tornadus do not match up too well against Landers or Dialga, so yeah, that's the kind of idea against Tornado. Hopefully you're gonna get Tornadus Incineroar lead though. Other matchup that might cause trouble is Venusaur, like the Venudon semi-trick room with Venusaur Porygon 2 lead. Thanks to very high special defense or our Grimmsnarl, opponent actually gets a special attack boost on Porygon 2, which is great because suddenly it won't be able to go for something like Ice Beam or Max Hailstorm in its full power. Turn 1, go for Light Screen plus Max Quake on a Venusaur to get a... Actually, do we have a... Oh, we got Lamberry, so you're actually immune to Sleep Pattern. Good. So you actually go for the Max Quake, which, if Venusaur doesn't Dynamax, should just find the single Max Quake. If opponent Dynamaxes, you set up Light Screen and you take the attack super well. So other than that, turn 2 opponent could switch to Groudon, start setting up Swords Dances. Yeah, if actually the Max Quake turn 1 doesn't go, Venusaur try to KO it with Spirit Break next turn. If you get the knockout of Venusaur and opponent set up Trick Room, you could go for something. You should start trying to knock out Groudon as soon as possible. Max Quake plus switch to Incineroar is the best play. The next turn you want to just KO, even if opponent Dynamaxes the Groudon, you should be able to knock it out next turn, turn 3, with the Max Quake plus Frillwitz combination, and then the cleanup should be quite easy. Now, I've got a feeling Glastrider. I have not seen Glastrider actually in a long time on this team. So, pray for it to not come back onto this archetype, alright? I have not seen him like in a long time. Not sure why the Glastrider is over here. Venusaur Groudon lead is a bit more simple. You just go for a Max Airstream plus switch to Incineroar to just Mega Intimidate the Groudon. With double Intimidate, then you Burning Shot away the Groudon next turn because you are actually faster than it after a single Max Airstream, and it's just gonna be very passive Pokemon as a result. And you should be able to do it KO, Copper Berry Venusaur, either ways. So yeah, if he like goes for Sleep Powder and survives Max Airstream, you can fuck it out next turn for another Max Airstream to knock it out, or Max Quake. So yeah, and against Charizard, like, just go for Light Screen plus Max Roll to just knock it out, and follow one of the game plans above I talked about. So yeah, that's the Venudon Semi-Trick Room. Zed focused setup. Alright, so this matchup is again kind of a pickle. So you absolutely need to lead with Tapu Fini to prevent the spot from Amoonguss, unfortunately. So you actually have to switch Dialga turn 1. And go for Snarl. So as a result, you're going to get the Xerneas only +1 special attack. Turn 2, go for Max Quake plus another Snarl. You're not going to be one-shotting the Amoonguss with 2 Snarls plus Max Steel Spike, so Max Quake is a bit more a bit more reliable, since it's going to make your Dialga a bit more bulkier for later in the game. Turn 2, just go for another Snarl. As I've said before, the Max Starfall, you should be able to take the Max Starfall from Xenius with Incineroar, and even if Xenius Dynamax, and go for Max Quake. Get another Snarl to reset a special attack to neutral. After that, go the Amogus with Max Steel Spike to make yourself a bit more bulky against Landorus, and let Incineroar go. Turn 2, target Xenius' ally with Dialga, and protect the Finny from Max Starfall, so you just switch the Finny next turn. Which would still take a massive damage from Xenius' Max Starfall, since it's just still very powerful. 130 base per attack that is boosted by Fairy Aura, so protect the Finny. And the rest of the game is really depends on whatever is rests on the opponent's team. So as I've said before, if opponent did not bring in Landorus yet, say Finny. But if opponent brought in Landorus turn 4, preserve the Landorus, so Incineroar gets counteracted a bit harder with Landorus, with your Landorus in late game. So yeah. And usage tips against Xenius plus Incineroar late. Now this is the problematic one I actually didn't think of. So you basically go for Fake Out, I would probably go like something like this faster Incineroar. I still believe you should take the Max Starfall, since a lot of Xeniuses I've seen are going bulkier variants. But in that case they're modest, right. But you still have like, with investment I've shown, you got guaranteed chance to survive this Max Starfall, but you should be going for something in between 93 speed and 83 speed to have as high of a chance to outspeed the opponent's Incineroar as possible, to get a Fake Out before they can, to prevent it to go for a free Geomancy without any Snarl boost. So keep that in mind. You need to go a little bit for a little bit more speed, a little bit less special defense than I talked about earlier in the team section, to just so you can beat this archetype. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating, but that's how matchup roulette sometimes goes. Rest of the game plan is get a Calm Mind off, go for Mighty Water turn 2 plus Snarl, and turn 3 switch to Dialga, and follow the game plan I've talked about above the game plan, this one. Alright, so far not too many good matchups. We're really kind of like trying to, unlike the maybe Kaiga matchup was like good matchup, but so far I have a feeling Dialga just kind of like is having the short end of the stick here in a lot of these matchups, and it relies on stuff like some ridiculous stuff like Lumberry Landorus, very specific thing to beat the Sun matchup, which is not very healthy since it means you're a step behind against these archetypes. So I Cataracts Shadow Rider in DD, Light Screen plus, yeah, against a DD Cataracts Sleet. These game plans are so complicated as well, right? It really is showcasing the Dialga is a bit behind a lot of these archetypes, unfortunately. Yeah, Light Screen plus switch to Incineroar turn 1, since there is very high chance opponent kind of like goes for Max Mindstorm into Thunderous. Max Phantasm is just stupid because it would boost my Defiant ability. And going for Max Strike, Max Starfall doesn't make sense either, so Max Mindstorm is the only option for the opponent. So the idea is you switch to Incineroar from Thunderous turn 1 and you just absorb the Max Mindstorm. Turn 2, if you think opponent switches to Thunderous, go for something like Flare Blitz plus Spirit Break into the slot, since it's has very high chance of switching in into to absorb the Snarl to get the Defiant boost. So yeah, no, watch out for that. You can go for Snarl plus Spirit Break if you do not believe opponent Thunderous switches in, because it's actually a very usual Pokemon you can find on this team. I should definitely update the layouts on these presentations. Unfortunately, I didn't have time in the past week to do that, but yeah, turn 3 use Reflect plus Flare Blades according to the situation, and your idea is to bring in your Thunderous later in the game to reverse sweep the game with max Airstreams. Dialga should help with that, with the reverse sweep, pretty easy reverse sweep as well. Now against NDD Thunderous Incarnate Form lead, you actually get longer end of the stick here. You set up Reflect, Airstream to hit KO the NDD, opponent struggles to do it KO your Grimmsnarl, and it's just like opponent has to max lightning your Thunderous to knock it out. It's kind of annoying for them to deal with your Thunderous while you are just kind of removing their pieces one by one with no punishment whatsoever. So yeah, you That is the game plan here. Dual screens Dialga. your idea is the snarl spam plus light screen. Because Thunderous, I've seen very rarely, I've seen Thunderous on the opponent's teams here, so having a snarl plus light screen, you should be having the longer end of the stick. And this should be long switch heavy game, but you can also go for like sword stance in most inappropriate moment with your Landorus. I actually don't talk about it here. Set up sword stance and then reverse with the opponent's Dialga team with max airstream against their, for example, Landorus and max quick. Now one shots the Dialga even if its setups reflect, because it cannot really Dynamax later in the game. The opponent cannot Dynamax twice, so yeah. Calm Mind Finny could be very irritating for the opponent as well. So yeah, that's the idea on the mirror. Counter like Ice Rod, good stuff. This is where we got the good matchups going, alright? So like Fake Tears plus coverage move their team to Oblivion with your Grimmsnarl plus Dialga combination. Bring in Feeny once opponent brings in a Mungus to prevent the spores. And if you set up dual screens, opponent can't really strike your Dialga with super effective attack. Opponent cannot remove your Dialga from the field because it has weakness plus. So it's just incredibly irritating for opponent to deal with Fake Tears plus max steel spikes. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, Calyrex Ice Rider, you're just gonna loath at its max quakes if you get Reflect plus a defense boost up. So, and it applies the same for Feeny. Just defense boosting Feeny is going to make Calyrex Ice Rider like really struggle against it as well. So yeah, that's the idea against this archetype. You really are having an advantage here. You against Station Lapras, another debatable matchup if it's good for you or not, but like the idea is that you're kind of forced to lead the Incineroar Grimmsnarl. I mean like there is alternative game plan possible, but with actually going with Dialga plus a Grimmsnarl, but I feel that game plan just really preys upon the they just switch around and substitute around with like Zacian plus their ally. They waste your Dynamax turn extremely easily with substitute plus max Dynamax Pokemon, and you are gonna get your Dynamax turns are gonna be kind of stolen out of you, and opponent will just overwhelm you with Zacian with Sacred Sword later in the game. So the idea is to strike with weakness plus Dialga in the end game. So against Asian Lapras, parting shotting Lapras plus reflecting this to one is the play, so you survive the close combat guaranteed. You should be also surviving the max gauge because of your ridiculous special defense, and if you run a lot of speed, as I've recommended already twice in the video, you should be able to outspeed Lapras, and you should be able to parting shot it, since a lot of Lapras are actually light clay or weakness pluses, so you should be able to punish that with parting shot. Switch Dialga next to Grimmsnarl, and now it's like they already Dynamaxed their kind of like passive Pokemon. It's gonna be annoying to face up against the possible substitutes of the Zacian, but you should be trying to just... opponent is as passive as you are, and they're already wasting their Dynamax. They're just not going for a late game Thunderous, so that is a good thing. They are not going for a late game Thunderous, and your opponent's Lapras is going to be passive, and you should be able to go for Lapras's Factories plus max steel spike against Lapras is going to be easy to hit KO regardless of if it's Dynamax or not. Your defense boosting yourself, which is going to be kind of useless against Zacian, but Zacian really fears to attack anything at this point. So yeah, you should be able to just kind of like get correct special defense or defense boost, and late game should be a smooth sail, but realization is going to be still a prick to deal with, unfortunately. Zacian just has the advantage against this archetype by default, unfortunately, in late game with Sacred Sword, as long as you can't afford to have Dialga Dynamax in late game. Against Zacian Thunderous, it's kind of even more annoying, unfortunately. Flare Blitz to Zacian, you should be limiting Max Knuckle plus Sacred Sword combination, and Flare Blitz should weaken the Zacian below the substitute range. So after that, bring in Dialga, finish off the Zacian with Max Steel Spike, set up light screen so nothing can question Dialga's authority anymore, and you should be able to win the game. So you see, removing Zacian is literally after you remove the Zacian, the game is pretty much over for the opponent. So the general idea is to just kind of like, maybe even double up the Zacian, I don't know, but it's generally a good idea to just kind of fear out the Zacian and just get with it as soon as possible, because after that, Dialga is unquestionable in late game. So yeah, that's the idea of this game plan. Just get with the Zacian as soon as possible. Do not let it set up free substitutes. I might even recommend actually leading Incineroar plus Dialga actually. When I think about it right now, from like after I've written this, I think Dialga plus Incineroar could be great combo, since it allows you to just allows Zacian to not set up any substitutes at any point of the game, which is absolutely fantastic. And Lapras late is kind of screwed because you can just max Quake the Zacian plus Burning Shot at Lapras, and it's going to be extremely Lapras is going to be extremely passive. Yeah, so actually, changing my mind. If you got it all the way up until this point, go with Dialga and Incineroar, and just target down the Zacian as much as possible, and then just go for a reverse sweep, because Dialga is just so good in late game. And Evoltal plus Friend. This is another archetype that generally struggles against Thundurus. If we would not have Thundurus though, that Dialga would have incredible amount of problems against Snarl, Evoltal plus Landorus plus Eerie Impulse Raichu. But we got Thundurus plus Incineroar. That is just big death sentence for this team. And unfortunately, I don't think opponents should be able to just even match that dominance. Yeah, Double Fini and Dialga are kind of annoying for you in the back. You can still spike as I've said, still spike the Fini as well to just get a defense boost, so nothing questions its authority in late game. If opponent has Ferrothorn though, I've seen a bunch of Ferrothorns on this team, please have Ferrothorn, safe Incineroar for late game Ferrothorn, so yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah, music is still going, alright. So counters to this archetype, there are a bunch of counteraction to this. So Landorus plus counter to Intimidate is basically your best bet. Ignore the Dialga, but keep in mind opponent might be like switching the Landorus to just kind of weaken your Landorus, but like Landorus should be kind of like making your opponent's Dialga very passive, so if you should just counter Intimidate with something like Thundurus or Sleeper Brick something like Melodic. I feel Melodic is a bit underused right now, and it's pretty bulky and impossible to remove with some Steel Spike plus Max Quake, so yeah, if you get something like a Intimidate Deterration, you should be able to just go for the special defense boost, and Dialga won't be able to do anything about it, and it's going to be just way too passive, especially since something like Thundurus plus Landorus should be able to do it just one shot double up the Grimmsnarl to easily one-shot it, so yeah. But yeah, keep in mind opponent might switch to Landorus, since it's the best counteraction to opponent's Landorus, as I've said earlier in the game. Heavy Snarling plus keeping Thundurus and current form in check. Dialga hates Snarl. Dialga hates light screen, as I've mentioned multiple times today. And you pretty much successfully halt the Dialga's early game sweep. Keep in mind, helping it plus Max Quake might be able to one-shot your Incineroar. So something like Snarl, Galar, and Moltres might be one of your like one of I would say like more sleeper picks as well, because I feel it's kind of okay to have Assault Vest, Snarl, Grimmsnarl, Snarl, Moltres, Galar, and it's really gonna snarl that Dialga well. So prepare for entry of Thundurus early game though, like as I've said before, since you are just so much baiting the Snarl with your Incineroar, you might be able to respond to it with stuff like Flare Blitz plus a attack of your Dynamax into the Dialga slot, and opponents be like just KO the Thundurus on a switch, and then Dialga will inevitably have the Dynamax and content with the Snarl spam. It's really, you are a step ahead. Do not get mind gamed out of the game, alright? Boosting special defense is another counteraction you can do. Light Screen, Max Quake, Snarl are all your great friends. As I've said, mentioned, something like Light Screen plus Calm Mind Fini. It will just halt the Dialga sweep so much. Dialga will be just sitting there, not doing anything, and you're just going to be setting up more and more Calm Minds. So as long as you just keep in check, like physical checks, opponent's Dialga got in the back, you should be able to just easily make a Calm Mind reverse sweep of Tapu Fini in reality. Xerneas is about the same idea, and like redirecting plus setting up Calm Minds is also very annoying for Dialga. Yeah, and Max Quaking is also just on some weird Pokemon, could be key to just taking and halting the great Dialga's powerful attacks, stopping them from KOing your Pokemon. Yeah, so that's the idea. Luring an Incineroar instead of leading with Thundurus is like, see most of my game plans through the presentation. Stuff like Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and stuff like other Pokemon are just lure in Incineroar because the Dialga cannot really deal with them. You can just punish these stuff like with just Thundurus leading. See most of the presentations I've talked about today. most of the matchups just a little bit thunderous, and you sometimes see magic involved with it if opponent leads with Incineroar. But watch out, Thunderous has pretty bad matchup against Dialga, since it can't max knuckle it, and it just cannot do much against Steel Spike boosted Dialga friends and Dialga. Bulldoze's weakness plus a Leech is also something interesting. Metagross has a longer end of the stick. I'm repeating myself, but it has longer end of the stick against Dialga. If they Bulldoze, you're not gonna get your speed dropped, you're gonna get a max quick before they can. You're gonna, as a result, take Dialga's attack a bit better. You're gonna do it KO it earlier before they can go for a Steel Spike. And it's gonna be overall a nightmare for Dialga to deal with. Of course, that you can have your own Bulldozer, like Spectre, or you can just wait for their own Bulldozer to go for the Bulldoze. So, like Spectre of their own. So watch out, Spectre can go for something like Will-O-Wisp, so keep that in mind. That can be quite annoying to deal with, so bring in something like Finny to prevent the Will-O-Wisp. And late game Cortana plus KOing Zapdos early, keep it in check. I've seen a bunch of players actually playing Zapdos instead of Thunderous on their Dialga teams, and the idea of the Zapdos is literally to be like a perfect counteraction to Cortana. It resists everything Cortana has, and it very well one-shots back, very easily one-shots back with Max Flare, or 2-hit KOs back with Max Airstream plus Max Flare, so that's the basic idea. Cortana is great in late game. If you just manage the opponent, like, make opponent think like, oh boy, Zapdos is just gonna, I do not want this Dynamax Zapdos, opponent might say. There's no Cortana on the battlefield. I'm gonna Dynamax the Dialga instead. So with that, you should be able to remove the Zapdos early game because it doesn't Dynamax, or it's not very well preserved. You remove the Zapdos, waste a bunch of Dialga's max turns, and then you bring in your Cortana. Cortana has amazing matchup against most of the opponent's team. As you saw, Grimmsnarl is easy attack boost, so is Incineroar, as long as you weaken it before. Landorus is just like, if it's already on the field, you can still spike it. Among Us that I've seen on these teams are passive as well. Finis are passive on these teams as well. So you're seeing like Cortana can get extremely easy attack boosts, defense boosts, and opponent just can't do much to stop it. And after you finish Dynamaxing, and Dialga is the last Pokemon standing, because Dialga doesn't do all that much to Cortana with Assault Vest that it's Dynamax, but it's Earth Power, and it usually doesn't carry Flamethrowers, so with its Earth Power, it didn't do much to Cortana, and after Cortana stops Dynamaxing, and it's now finally threatened by Earth Power, you can just go for Sacred Sword, cut through its defense boosts with your attack boost, and you should be able to one-shot it before it can even proc its weakness policy. And that's how you use Cortana against Dialga. So yeah, that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about in Dialga Archetype. If you have any questions, feel free to say in the comments, and I'll catch you next Metagame Monday. Probably with Xenius, but we're gonna see. So, have a nice day.